Hi guys, welcome to Music History Channel. Before we get started, make sure to hit that like button and also subscribe to my channel. The history of rock music, so make sure to watch the full video. Since the genre's inception in the late 1940s, rock music's history has been turbulent and unpredictable due to its constant self-reinvention. Giving such an erratic musical form a simple definition can be challenging. Rock music, however, can be broadly characterized as hard, edgy music performed with electric guitars, bass, and drums, and typically accompanied by lyrics sung by a vocalist, despite disagreements on specifics. That may seem straightforward, but a closer examination of rock history reveals how various trends and influences have shaped the genre's growth. What is the origin of rock music? It's debatable whether the tune was the first rock song. The Orioles song is credited as being the first rock tune. It was published in November 1948 and authored by Deborah Chesler. However, many musicians and fans consider Jackie Brenston's Rocket 88 the first authentic rock and roll song because it didn't use a distorted guitar. It emerged in 1951, 3 years after. It's too soon to know. Why is rock and roll music called that? According to legend, seamen in the 17th century used the expression rocking and rolling to describe how ships move on the ocean. Over time, the phrase changed, and it is now frequently used to describe dancing or even making out. The phrase was widely recognized as a common slang term, unlike other expressions that concealed an unrelated meaning behind them. Later, as rock music gained popularity, performers and fans began using the word. Rock's beginnings can be found in the late 1940s, when a new sound was created using electric guitars and a continuous drummer to combine two prominent musical genres, country music and blues. Pioneering rock musicians of the 1950s, like Chuck Berry, primarily drew on traditional blues frameworks while showcasing a flair as born entertainers. Rock's violent onslaught represented sexual liberation, which was stunning in that conservative era in contrast to the safe pop music of the day. By the early 1960s, Berry's admirers, most notably the Rolling Stones, had transformed from singles artists into songwriters who could create entire albums of songs, broadening the definition of rock. The Stones courted controversy by embracing sensuality and adolescent rebellion in their music, but they also advanced rock to new cultural heights. As rock music grew in popularity and became the predominant genre, new bands drew on the strengths of their predecessors while venturing into uncharted sonic waters. Led Zeppelin gave rock a deeper, harder tone, becoming one of the most well-known bands of the 1970s and helping to establish the hard rock or heavy metal subgenre. Pink Floyd added psychedelic elements and intricate arrangements around the same period, resulting in concept albums with a common subject meant to be consumed in one sitting. Progressive rock is recognized as having its roots in albums like Dark Side of the Moon. Punk was created in the late 70s when bands like the Sex Pistols and The Clash distilled rock down to its essential elements of loud guitars, harsh attitude, and outraged singing in response to what they saw as pretentious hippie music like Pink Floyd. While each of the three movements had varying levels of mainstream acceptance, a fourth, less well-known style was starting to emerge. Groups like Pure Ubu became the forerunners of industrial rock, an abrasive subgenre that didn't enjoy mainstream appeal but influenced subsequent rock bands. Industrial rock emphasized atonal noise and unorthodox rock instruments, like drum machines. Beginning in the 1980s, mainstream rock was losing its commercial appeal and sounding stale. Subgenres began to exert their supremacy in such an artistically dead space. Post-punk, a new wave, was created by keyboard-driven English bands like Depeche Mode, who displayed a more reclusive songwriting style. The outsider nature of punk and the varied industrial instrumentation influenced it. While this was going on, American bands like Rem experimented with post-punk elements, while balancing introspective lyrics with classic rock band arrangements. Because of their ubiquity on college radio stations, these bands became known as college rock. By the 1980s conclusion, college rock had developed into such a successful substitute for mainstream rock that it was given the name alternative rock. Because the bands were frequently signed to small independently owned labels, it was also known as indie rock. In 1988, the music journal Billboard established a new chart for alternative rock, categorized as modern rock, solidifying the genre's cultural legitimacy. For the majority of music lovers, labels like modern rock alternative, and indie are interchangeable ways to describe this well-liked subgenre. Jackie Brenston and his Delta Cats' Rocket 88 was one of the earliest rock and roll songs. After being released in 1951, the song soon became popular. The song paved the path for subsequent rock and roll songs that came after because of its bouncy tempo, appealing lyrics, and great energy. Chuck Berry was one of the most important people in rock and roll history. His streak of singles, such as Johnny B. Good and Roll Over Beethoven, displayed his distinctive guitar-playing technique and his capacity for penning engrossing tunes that audiences could relate to. Little Richard was another performer who was essential to the development of rock and roll. He was renowned for his flamboyant appearance and upbeat performances, frequently featuring jumping on pianos and performing the splits. He was the author of the hits Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, and Good Golly Miss Molly. Elvis Presley, who became one of the most recognizable figures in rock and roll history, was also a prominent personality in the 1950s. He became famous for his distinctive fusion of country, blues, and rock and roll, and was soon called the King of Rock and Roll. He is perhaps best known for the tunes Heartbreak Hotel, Jailhouse Rock, and Hound Dog. Alternative rock rose to prominence in 1991, when Nirvana's Nevermind became the most popular song. Others, like Soundgarden, straddled the worlds of alternative and mainstream rock music, while more bands quickly emerged as part of the so-called grunge movement, a fusion of hard rock and punk. By the middle of the decade, alternative music began to lose appeal, exacerbated by the suicide of Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain. This created the ideal environment for mainstream rock to make a comeback. Limp Bizkit, who combined hard rock and rap to create a genre known as rap rock, was one of the first bands to benefit from the resurgence of popular rock. Following Limp Bizkit, bands like Stained and Puddle of Mud specialized in melodic hard rock rather than fusing rap into the music. Bands like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, popular during grunge's peak, but didn't easily fall into the alternative subgenre, found audiences throughout the 1990s. In addition, bands that sprang from grunge's ashes, like Foo Fighters, infused outsider energy from alternative music into mainstream rock. Even though they sounded very different, the most popular rock groups, as rock music entered the 21st century, shared the same spirit as its predecessors from the 1960s. Linkin Park combines hip-hop and metal, and Three Doors Down pays homage to the history of hard rock, while giving it a modern twist. Rock music will undoubtedly continue to develop, drawing from its rich past while watching for the next sound revolution. With contemporary bands like the Black Keys, the Arctic Monkeys, and the Strokes carrying on the genre's tradition. Rock and roll has been thriving lately. Despite all the changes over time, rock and roll continued to impact future generations of musicians and fans alike significantly. So that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed the video. Use the comments section below to tell us your thoughts about the video. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell button to be notified of all the latest videos.